This is episode 14 with Michael and myself, and today we have a special guest on, William. Hello.
Hi. Hi there.
Right, guys, before we leap into the interview with our guest, we've got a couple of news items to cover. They're both platform news. So it's emerging that Trading 212 are in the process of rolling out their SIPP. So previously they were the one that was the laggard of the free platforms, but they're getting into it now. Yes, Michael.
Yes, so we mentioned Trading 212 a while ago. They're one of the new free platforms that have emerged relatively recently, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I think that their SIPP is sort of slowly coming out in dribs and drabs, and it's not the full product yet.
We're not sure if this is just visible to their existing members or to all comers as yet, but there is evidence of it appearing. So that's starting to make things interesting, because a lot of people like Trading 212. They've got their pluses over the other guys. And the other platform that's coming along is a startup called Prosper, which you may or may not have heard of. They are a little startup. Somebody told me they've got about 15,000 subscribers so far. But they're regulated, so in theory you're fully protected. They're offering free accounts, the full range of SIPP, ISA, and GIA, but as well as their angle is, as well as just making the platform free, they are discounting certain funds to zero to make it completely free to invest. For the purposes of passive investors like Mike, who will only touch a global fund, they appear to just have the one. There's Fidelity Index World, which is discounted to zero. Now, their fee wasn't massive anyway. It was 0.12% per year, but free is my favorite price. So this is starting to be interesting. They're shouting about their other features, like that they accept employer contributions, but that's a bit misleading. It appears that is only if you're the director of your own company. So they're not quite there in the full featured range yet.
Yeah, so I think there were some comments in our Facebook group about this, and a few people sort of saying it looked a bit too good to be true, and what's the business model? And I think the consensus was that the business model is to try and get a platform going, get a number of subscribers, and then hope that they get bought by maybe a bigger company. Is that right?
Yeah, but for the consumer, in the meantime, it's a great deal. So you could always play this game. People have said the same about Invest Engine, and they're still going along, making a loss as far as I know, and they've not sold your business on to someone else yet.
No, so if you're starting a SIPP, you can do a lot worse, and it's very hard to find somewhere cheaper.
The good thing for the market is this is going to put pressure on the ones that charge more, so it can only improve things for consumers.
Great. Right.
Let's move on to the interview.
Yes, so on the podcast today, we've got William, who's joined our Facebook group, and we wanted to get a wider range of people on the podcast. We've normally had quite a few middle-aged white men, and someone a bit younger. Sorry?
None taken.
And we thought we'd aim for someone a little bit younger. So William's in his 30s and on the FAR journey, and we thought it'd be interesting to talk to him about things from his perspective. So welcome, William.
Hi. Yeah, mid-30s, still a white guy. I've got a beard, and that's about as defining features as I've got.
Great. So what we're interested really is how you heard about FIRE and sort of where you were and at what stage you kind of decided to get on board and what your kind of goals are.
Yeah, so I guess with FIRE generally, I would have seen it years ago, sort of on YouTube or something, and generally is just here's what seems like a nice idea. I would imagine then in my late 20s or whatever, if it was sort of thing that my relationship to FIRE was kind of like a jog. I started to put money onto Vanguard in an ISA, because I learned that stocks and shares ISA is better than a cash ISA. I had no idea what I was doing other than that though, so I would just put £100 into a different fund each time. So I ended
Right.
up with like 40 different funds. Um, Eventually, uh, through my uncle, was put onto Rebel Finance School and stuff, and I went through that, and then obviously got rid of all of those 40 different funds that were in like random markets, put into a global fund, and just sort of started looking at pensions and everything. I don't really have a FIRE number or an age. Um, all of that still seems really far away, but I generally just try to treat it like if I do this as best practice, probably can't go wrong.
Yeah.
So
Andy.
the advantage of doing that on Vanguard is, of course, they've no trading fees, so there wasn't really any penalty for bitting and bobbing and having 100 quid in this fund and 100 in another.
Yeah. Yeah, just years of probably bad growth.
But I was going to say, how did they go? Was it a real mixture?
I think it was just I would see some and I wouldn't understand why £100 here had become £120 over a period, but £100 over there was now down. Um, just didn't I was just blindly picking things, thinking if I just had a broad spread, surely it can't go too far wrong. I was also in their life funds and things.
Yeah. I mean, I guess at a certain point, if your range was wide enough, you end up coming full circle and having what's basically a global fund equivalent yourself, but maybe with slightly different
Yeah,
skews to different markets and things. So it wouldn't be all that different, but just
yeah, that's
like a lot
true.
harder to track.
Yeah, and I think I don't regret doing it obviously because I got started. I feel like this is often an issue people have is they get paralysis to actually start doing something. And I've never quite been on that side of the fence. I've always just thought, well, I may as well just put some money in there and see what happens, and saw that it usually went up, so kept doing that until I finally actually understood what I should be looking at.
I think that's a very interesting point because we hear a lot of people in the group who are starting out who, yeah, don't know what to put it in, so they don't put in anything, and then they keep the money in cash and they're sort of waiting till they understand it completely before they put any money in, and by that time they've lost 6 months. Where, yeah, as you say, you might as well put it in something, and you don't always know what the best thing to put it in. And if you did know what the best thing to put it in was, you'd be an investment banker making a fortune.
Yeah, I mean, I realize a lot of people are probably moving very large sums of money further along, so it can be scary. But I've always thought if you're worried about where to put £100,000, just put £1,000 somewhere and
Yeah.
see what happens, and then you've at least, done something.
Yeah, you gain the experience, you become familiar with the whole process, and it becomes less scary.
Yeah.
Did you sort of pay much attention to the detail of which funds had done well and which ones hadn't, or did you just kind of like
Not
ignore that and
really.
consolidate them all? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't understand or I guess suppose care how it was going. I just assumed, well, if I keep putting money in this pot, I've been told it should do well. And then once I started to care about it more, I would say 3-ish years ago, I understood the concept of like the global index fund and was like, that makes sense to me. I'll just do that. And then um, transferred them all across and then started looking at my pension and stuff and then moving those.
So have you got a pension where you work, or are you self-employed and do it yourself?
I got one through work and then I have a SIP, which is basically I just consolidated all of my old pensions. Um, I probably with the old pensions could have double checked the math better, but they were so disparate and small. I just thought I'm just going to put them all in with the Vanguard account, and then I'll just go from there if I need to move it
Yeah.
somewhere else.
So you've done all the sort of housekeeping and got everything kind of tidied up. and now it's just a case of just keep plugging away. I think what we'd call the
Yeah,
boring middle.
yeah. I was accidentally in London during the marathon, not doing it. It was just coincidence, that really delayed me getting anywhere. But for some reason it made me think like, oh, I've basically started the run and I'm on like mile 5, and I have to get much further along before much interesting happens.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a Wikipedia, or a wiki, and I remember we wrote an article, didn't we, called "The Boring Middle," where we kind of talk about some of these things. And I know, Andy, you've talked about it in your books, haven't you?
Yeah, it's hard keeping the motivation. For me, the kicker was as soon as you start seeing some growth, then that motivated me to start throwing everything at it, because you can see the results, and right, I want more of this. So that for me changed my behavior and my spending and the frugality side of it. Uh, I mean, have you seen? Do you monitor your savings rate or anything like that? Have you seen that improve?
It definitely improved. Like, I realized I'm now someone who, if I sign up for a Netflix or a Disney Plus, I then immediately cancel it and watch what I want in that month.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like small term savings. I have some charts, some spreadsheets that I follow, and generally I'm looking at if in theory, what could you live off with your pot? And I like seeing that go up, and that's kind of probably the motivator. Although that number is quite slow to go up, so I might need to think of one that's
Yeah,
really interesting.
I think one of the ways I did it was I sort of thought, well, in a few years' time, I might be able to just about eke out an existence in a hut in sort of Cambodia or somewhere,
Yeah.
and then gradually sort of work my way up to somewhere that was approaching UK again. But it took quite a
Yeah,
while to get there. Yeah.
that's a good way. Maybe I should figure out like the average salary of some random country, and it's like, yeah, in theory, I could now go and live in
There
Southeast Asia
are
or something.
there are websites that will do that for
Yeah,
you, where you can
I was
sort of
going to say
see.
there's a great website called Numbeo that will tell you the cost of living in any city that they've got data for, and any country, and you can compare it to cities in the UK, and so you can go and say, okay, yeah, I could go and live in Phnom Penh in Cambodia, to use Mike's example, and it might be 50% cheaper than Derby, which is my local city. And you think, okay, yeah, that's quite tempting, until you then go and look at what's the lifestyle out there.
Yeah, and
30
Yeah.
then
degrees all year round.
you've got to tell your partner we're moving next week to Cambodia. Yeah.
And then
Speaking of
Yeah.
which, William, is your partner on board with this? Are you on the same page?
um, I think I mean, the fact I'm having to think about it clearly doesn't mean that we're both doing fire, but she's on the same page, but isn't as into it, I suppose, as I am. Um, Once I got everything sorted, we started looking at her finances and got them in a much better place, moved her pension across and such, and that's helped her be able to pass that on to her sister and mum and get their sort of situation stabilized and stuff, and they've sorted out because her mum's sort of nearing retirement. So they sort of started to look at like, well, how many pensions do you have, and are they in what we want and stuff like that. Um, but I don't. She's not tracking every month and thinking about retiring early. Um,
Or at least
So
not yet.
so there's this idea
yeah.
that what gets measured gets managed. So do you find that tracking your spending is changing your behavior?
Uh, I'm not 100% sure. I feel like I have not had much of like a lifestyle cost increase over the last few years. I moved job, which had a sort of quite substantial pay increase, and I haven't suddenly started looking at Land Rovers or trips to Las Vegas and stuff.
That's a
Um,
big win.
Or
yes,
or a bigger house, which is the usual killer, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. I currently live in a flat, which is in Manchester, and I looked into that in the sense that where I was renting, they wanted to move to Spain, and they said, "Do you want to buy it?" And it was pre-COVID, so the price was good, and it all just made sense. Um, I would like a real house at some point with like a garden, um, and whether that's now affordable in Manchester, it probably is affordable, but whether it's affordable and you can fireable. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't done that math. But those are the sort of interesting, I guess, life questions that I'm going to have to deal with in the next 5 years or so.
Yeah, I think Andy and I were just talking about this actually before you joined, and I was saying that I was in a similar position at a similar age to you in London, and having a house anywhere in London was kind of sort of I always thought was kind of out of range, but sort of was trying to work out that decision about whether it's worth upgrading to have your own front door versus maybe a couple of years retiring a couple of years earlier or just having more money to spend. It's not easy. You said that
Mhm.
your partner's family are kind of involved. Did you have much of a financial education when you were growing up, either from your family or from your school?
I think the education, it wasn't so much like sitting down and learning how to balance a checkbook or whatever, but I think my parents were both quite sensible with their money. I would imagine based on the amount of they would that on a Friday they would sort of seemingly balance all of their receipts and such. Um, so I could imagine that they did end up buying a lot of stuff on finance, which was maybe not the most efficient thing for them to do. But generally, it was just you should spend less than you have, and if you put money into a pension, that's good, and that's it. School was just HSBC came around one day, opened a junior account. I think maybe I picked up some in passing because I did a business studies GCSE, and I sort of understood the like profit and loss and making those graphs and things. But there's nothing about pensions or anything.
Right. Yeah, I think that's quite a familiar story. But you had good role models in your parents, so presumably they were kind of on top of their finances. And
Yeah, we didn't. They like my dad. I never know if when you're working class or middle class or whatever, but my dad left school, went into a factory, and was there until he retired. Um, we never, as far as I was aware, went through financial hardship or whatever. So it was like a stable, safe base, and there was a not an expectation, but like you couldn't get everything, but you'd have nice things occasionally and such. So I think it was
yeah,
a good safe base to sort of grow up in.
and do you find it easy to talk about fire and pensions and stuff with friends at work and friends outside of your family sort of circle?
I mean I do. They aren't usually. I'm quite happy to talk about anything. I sort of quite early realized like in different jobs, like the only way I know how things are going is if we talk about like salaries and stuff. Like I don't think those things should be hidden between workers and such. But at my current job, I seemingly was the one who, by looking at this, then came back and was like, "Oh, by the way, we should all probably look. You should go look at your pension, and if you want, I'm happy to talk about it, but uh, we're not in great funds, and here are like three different like global index funds with low fees or whatever. You should think about moving to those. Some people went and just did the reading and went only into America and stuff, but like they're all better than what we were in. And also at this point, I'm fairly involved with my parents' finances because they've retired now, and they were not optimizing the money they had. They've just sort of had a pile of cash that was slowly going down. But obviously they're on defined benefit pensions, which are
Ooh, lovely.
something that I'll never see.
Yes, I mean that's quite a familiar story we've heard, isn't it, Andy, from other people, particularly older people who tend to retire with a combination of a defined benefit pension and a pile of cash because they've never really needed to know any more about pensions because they just expected the defined benefit pension to look after them, and they've usually got a pile of cash from somewhere and don't really know quite what to do with that either. Yeah.
I get quite triggered. The stats say that less than 20% of people have a DB pension, and everybody that I meet that talks about this, they've all got it. They've all got a DB pension. So it's refreshing to meet somebody that doesn't have. You're very welcome. I think we should have you on every week, and all these people with DB pensions can go and jump. Sorry, triggers me, sets me off.
Yeah. Have you always been an employee, William, or have you ever done it, been self-employed at all?
Uh, Not, yeah, I've always been a salary man, I suppose. When I was around uni, I sort of tried to get some freelance work going and stuff, but I generally found it very stressful and didn't have the contacts and stuff. So once I started to have a normal 9 to 5, just felt easier to stay into that groove, and I've just sort of stayed there.
Yeah. And you said that your recent job you got quite a significant pay increase, but presumably you haven't, as you were saying, you haven't got the Land Rover, so you basically kept your outgoings the same, but that just meant you could put more money into the pension or more money into the ISAs.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I did. We did get a new kitchen, which was not the most financially sensible thing to do, and I now, I had set that off the process of doing that just before I really got knowledgeable about fire and what everything means, and that's one of the things I regret. In not that we got a new, nicer kitchen, because our kitchen we did have was quite bad, but I should have realized that this isn't my forever home. So I should have maybe got like a certain type of kitchen and just put a financial cap on it instead of accidentally gotten a nice kitchen that I don't want to live here forever, which was a very silly use of money. But generally, their outgoings have stayed where they were.
I mean, I think everyone thinks that to at least something, and I think unless you know you're in your forever house, most of us won't be in the house we're in now in 10 or 15 years or the property we're in. So I think you kind of
Mm.
have to give yourself a bit of space in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it does give me joy when I see it. It wasn't a bad thing to do. It's just now I look at my it took a long time to pay it off. And
Yeah.
that was like a financial drag that as I learned more about fire, I was like, I don't really want this financial drag anymore because this is money I could be putting into different stuff. And so now I think I'm a lot more reticent to put things on like a flexi pay or things like that.
Right. That's an interesting perspective. Yeah. So you've moved much more into buying things and paying for them in one hit and then moving on
Mm,
to the next thing rather than letting them kind of drift and paying for them over the long term.
yeah.
So one question we had, which I thought we'd pose to you was, do you think fire is getting easier for younger people? When I say younger than middle aged, or do you think it's getting harder?
Uh, I'm I mean the news would tell me that it's getting harder.
Yeah,
And I think probably the flaw, like you have to like stabilize everything before you can get going. And I think it's quite easy to now fall into like, I don't know, I feel like I'm pulling out bad analogies here, but it feels like a lot of my friends are stuck in a little bit of quicksand where it's very easy to end up financed to a bunch of things,
yeah,
like a car that perhaps you didn't need. So therefore it's a bit harder to like get going.
yeah,
And I think it requires a lot of commitment, perhaps, to if you really want to like I'm full on fire type thought process. I think it's probably easier to get in a decent place because you can just all do it through a website and you can watch a YouTube video or something or find a community and ask questions.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say that in some ways it's easier because the information's all there, and Andy and I are trying to do our bit to help that, and Facebook groups and wikis and things like that, and this podcast. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of advertising pushing against you and trying to get you into bad habits. And I have discussions with friends about sort of car leases and things where people don't really understand what it is they've bought, and they don't really understand who owns the car and how it will work. So they just think, oh, it's great. I've got a great car and it's a couple hundred quid a week, kind of £300 a month, and I can drive this fantastic car. I don't know what your experience is, Andy. Would you say sort of easier or harder or sort of a bit of both?
I think I think at the basic level, younger people, or all of us, are facing ridiculous house prices, and the whole buying a home goal is looks very challenging. I think where fire comes in is you can live relatively modestly for now, do the investing and get a boost, because we know that on average the investment returns beat the house price growth. So you can fast track it and put the money on the investment escalator, and then buy the house later once you're FI, if you're aware of all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one big thing in the UK is that everything house prices yeah, do tend to derail a lot of people's fire plans, especially if they keep upgrading, because all the extra money you earn just gets plowed into the next house, and then you end up in a nice big house with no money at all, and end up, I don't know, having to downsize or something like that. But it's yeah, it's a challenge, and I think some of the people we talk to, I think Andy, we were talking about some other guests the other day. It depends a lot on where you live in the country as well. And if you're in a metropolitan area like Manchester or London, there's a lot of pressure then financially to put a lot of your money into the property, which then keeps it away from where it might be more useful, paying for your retirement.
But equally, later you could get once you get out of the game, you can move somewhere cheaper, can't you? Potentially.
Yes, that's an interesting point. I think we've had a discussion before about, yeah, I think you're I'm more of the fence that you buy somewhere for yourself as big as you can, but not too big. And I think you're more of the view that you might be better off renting and then waiting till you've got enough money to get a decent deposit together.
Yeah, that's fair to say. But William, what's your plan? Have you mapped out a trajectory, and are you looking at when's the soonest I can retire, or is this just freedom so that in your back pocket you've got the little FI ticket and you can have the choice later on?
Yeah. So I do enjoy my job. So that makes it easy. It's like not too stressful or anything. So at the moment, I don't have a number or an age. I assume both would feel very far away, but I should probably do the math and actually understand that. I know some people can fire very young, if you can live frugally enough. But I think in the next 5 years, I could imagine wanting to get a house, or if I have a child or something, and that those things might change the plan. I could imagine a world where perhaps my partner stops working if we have a child, in which case, what does the concept of fire look like in that instance? And there's a lot of unknowns, so I'm currently sticking to it just to see the numbers go up and then figuring it out. Uh, I don't know, later, maybe when I
Yeah,
turn be a 40th birthday treat.
yeah. I mean, it sounds like you're in a very good place, and you've done all the sensible things, and you've presumably got um, a bit of a buffer if you did need to take some time off or something like that to help your partner or something like that. We talked recently, didn't we, Andy, with someone about kind of taking taking sabbaticals and things when you have a if you had a child. I mean, I took 6 months off when ours was born to kind of help my wife, and it was great fun. But that was only because I kind of planned it a few years in advance and stuff. But that sounds really interesting. And I think, well, all the best with it. And I think, Andy, unless you have any more questions, that's all from all I had there, really.
No, that's it. That's been really interesting. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, William, and best of luck with your plans. And we'll maybe catch up with you in a year or two and see how you're getting on, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we'll call it a day there. Thanks very much, and bye-bye from me.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.